Amazing reveal. A millionaire's mother left in the dump saved by a touching cleaner, son Discov. Jake had built a fortress around his life, a sleek loft, professional accolades that lined his walls like trophies, and the prestige of being an architect in a bustling suburb of Chicago. His mornings started with the hum of espresso machines in boutique cafes and ended with polished presentations at ritzy networking events. But beneath the surface of this well-crafted image lurked an unsettling truth he couldn't bring himself to face. His mother, Helen, spiraled into the fog of Alzheimer's, drifting further each day into shadows he'd unwittingly allowed to cloak her. On weekdays she lingered in a corner at the dilapidated nursing home, sifting through relics of a past life that Jake had pushed aside to make room for his own ambitions. He hadn't seen her in months, believing all was well in the periphery of his busy world, a thought that scratched at his conscience in quiet moments. When he heard snatches of whispered gossip about Helen's forgotten wealth, a once privileged life slipping into neglect, his heart raced, uncertainty flooding his veins. Why had he been blind to her plight? Guilt crashed against him, rousing confusion and anger toward himself simultaneously. Why had he prioritized work over the woman who had nurtured him? Then came Maria. She entered Helen's world each day, her hands trembling slightly as she dusted the corners of the messy room. Within minutes, she found a bittersweet bond with the woman lost in memories. Maria listened intently, her heart absorbing Helen's tales of laughter, dreams, and joys once lived. But here was the contradiction. While Jake flourished externally, Maria's connection with his mother was slowly unraveling layers within himself, the warmth of family he had neglected, shadows of his privilege painting a stark contrast against her harsh reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Day by day, a festering urgency grew within him, gnawing at his sense of identity. Was success measured by contracts signed or by the bonds of blood? Anger bubbled beneath the surface as he navigated the facility, only to encounter dismissive employees and heartless bureaucracies that valued profit over people. Confronting the staff felt like facing a brick wall, and as the layers peeled away, he recognized a sobering realization. The privilege that had once insulated him now towered like a barrier between him and the woman who had sacrificed everything for his success. With every lingering glance at evaporating memories held by Helen, Jake's drive sharpened. He stood at the precipice of action, fighting against an entire system that clashed with his ethical beliefs. Yet, fluttering in his mind, was the nagging fear of failure. If he didn't succeed, would Helen slip away completely, lost to the fog? As Maria's laughter echoed in the nursing home, fragments of hope teetered on dissolution, pushing Jake to confront how a life filled with accolades could mask neglect. The walls of his fortress felt closer now, almost suffocating. Could he tear them down before it was too late? Each choice became a battleground, a desperate race against time, clashing with every true emotion he had long buried. Would he uncover the ultimate truth of success in this battle for his mother, or would the past shatter into irrevocable silence? Clarity surged through Jake as he stepped back from the nursing home entrance, the weight of his mother's neglect pressing against his chest. The stark sounds of the city beyond that he had once found soothing now felt like a cacophony drowning out his thoughts. He needed a plan, a decisive move to reclaim not only his mother's dignity, but his own humanity. He fished his phone from his pocket, his fingers hovering over Maria's contact. She had proven to be an unexpected thread, connecting him to the memories he feared would fade away. It took only seconds for him to type a message, each word laden with unspoken urgency and awkward vulnerability. "Can we talk?" The response came almost immediately. "Sure. I'm at the nursing home until 5. Is everything okay?" Her concern pricked at the layers of his self-imposed armor. Everything wasn't okay. It hadn't been for a long time. Yet within that recognition lay the first embers of determination. He realized that if he was to venture further into this emotional wilderness, he would have to let down the walls he had erected. Jake arrived at the nursing home unable to mask his agitation. As he approached the small, cluttered room filled with photographs, pieces of his mother's life that seemed to swirl in the air helplessly, he spotted Maria sitting beside Helen, their connection palpable and foreign to him. He cleared his throat, interrupting their moment. "Hi, Maria." She turned, surprise flickering across her face as she assessed his intent. The warmth of her smile contrasted sharply with the chill of his unease. "Jake, I was just listening to a story from Helen about when she went to Paris. Can we talk? Alone?" His request spilled out, charged with an urgency that momentarily silenced the room. "Of course," she answered, glancing at Helen, whose brow furrowed in confusion. Jake felt a pang of guilt, but steeled himself. It was time to act. Once they stepped outside, the cool breeze wrapped around them, and he could finally breathe. "Maria, what you do for my mother?" "It's extraordinary," he began, uncertain where to steer the conversation. "I appreciate it more than you know, but I'm not sure how to express that." "I just talked to her," Maria replied, her humility shining through. "But I sense you're struggling with something deeper." His gaze dropped to the ground, the words tumbling out like a long-awaited flood. "I've been blind. I've been so focused on my career that I neglected my responsibilities as a son. I didn't realize how far she's drifted from me." "Many people do that," Maria countered steadily. "But the important thing is that you're here now, trying to correct it." Her words resonated within him, stirring a long-lost sense of accountability. The conversation shifted from surface-level pleasantries to profound realities. Together they crafted a rough plan, exploring better care options, engaging with the nursing home staff, and finding ways to infuse joy into Helen's life amidst her fragments of fading memory. Jake felt an almost electrifying sense of urgency fueling each idea they exchanged. For the first time in years, he was stepping into the realm of action rather than observation. As they wrapped up their discussion, Jake sensed that this was a turning point, bridging where he had been and where he intended to go. He looked deep into Maria's eyes, drawn by something he couldn't quite articulate, the realization that he needed her insight as much as he needed to protect his mother. With each word unspoken, Jake felt the slow, steady unfolding of a new resolve. "Thank you, Maria. I think I'm ready to take more responsibility. I want to make this right." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber hue over his life, Jake found himself standing at the edge of a new reality, one forged through action rather than ambition. Yet something gnawed at him, the spectre of confrontation with the nursing home staff, lurking just out of reach. The time had come for him to face the system that had long neglected his mother. What would he discover about himself, and the people who had grown complacent in their cruelty, if he pushed the boundaries he had previously accepted? Would he finally break the cycle of neglect before it swallowed them both whole? Determination now coursed through Jake's veins like electricity, infusing his limbs with energy that had long been dormant. As he exited the nursing home, his mind raced with the possibilities Maria had helped him envision. But the sense of urgency soon morphed into doubt. What if he failed? What if he wasn't capable of executing the responsibilities he had promised? The thought felt heavy, almost paralyzing. With each step away from the nursing home, he felt the weight of other people's eyes, judgment reflected in their gazes. His pulse quickened at the thought of confronting the staff, addressing the swirling questions of inadequacies and neglect he had merely observed until now. Would they dismiss his concerns as a son too late to engage, or worse, a son seeking scapegoats for his own shortcomings? Jake grabbed hold of his phone, scrolling through a mixed bag of contacts. He hesitated before typing out names, people who could help him navigate this labyrinth of care and oversight. He tapped on the face of his former colleague, a healthcare administrator, who had offered to help him with similar issues in the past. As he formulated a concise message to her, he was interrupted by the relentless ring of his phone. "Jake, is everything all right?" It was Ellen, his assistant, whose concern had always been genuine, yet whose inquiry now felt almost invasive. "Yeah, just..." He hesitated, unsure of how to explain his emotional upheaval. "I'm sorting some family matters out." "Is there something I can do?" Her willingness to assist pricked at something inside him. "Actually, yes. I could use insight on elder care policies, what they're obligated to do for their residents." His voice trembled slightly, a stark contrast to the confident tone he used in the boardroom. "I can gather some information if you want," she offered, demonstrating her usual efficiency, although Jake sensed something deeper in her tone. "Just remember, you have to keep your own well-being in mind too." The deep concern in her voice ignited a flicker of guilt. His focus had primarily been on his mother's condition, neglecting the relationships that had shaped his own life. After hanging up, he took a moment to breathe in the crisp air, feeling the night settle around him. Clarity was evident again, this time with more depth. He realized that seeking help wasn't weakness, but a potential avenue for the growth he desperately craved. With his mother's future teetering on the edge of institutional indifference, he had no option but to push forward. He spent the next hour mapping out a strategy, bullet-pointing crucial points to address with the nursing home staff. Yet, the words felt detached from the gravity of his mission. Their faces, the indifferent staff who had failed to care for Helen, haunted him. Each image left a bitter taste in his mouth. In the days that followed, Jake prepared for the meeting with the nursing home management. Every interaction with Maria built confidence, solidifying the sense that he was part of something larger than himself, a network of care and connection. She'd meet him in the afternoon to role-play the conversation, and she had listened carefully, dissecting tangents of anger, frustration, and confusion he voiced. As preparations escalated, he noticed something else rising within him, the birth of assertiveness. He wanted to ensure his mother received the respect and care she deserved, but he also recognized that he had a right to demand this treatment as her son. He no longer felt shackled by ambivalence, but rather liberated by his willingness to confront feelings he could no longer afford to push aside. Later that evening, under the unyielding glow of a single lamp, Jake stood facing the mirror. The reflection staring back seemed more decisive, transformed by the demanding emotional journey he was now navigated, but deep down, a nagging anxiety lingered. As he practiced the speech one last time, he couldn't shake the thought, what if the management was resistant? What if they undermined him entirely? Then one phrase slipped past his lips, "I will not walk away." This resonated within him as the longest vow he had ever made. Just as the final echoes of resolve settled in, Jake realized he was not just preparing for a meeting. He was preparing to peel back layers of his own identity. This confrontation could change not only Helen's life, but also his, igniting a realization of who he could become. Yet in that realization, a frightening prospect emerged. What if this confrontation revealed a world darker than he had imagined? The answers lay beyond the door that led to the nursing home management, the very door he was about to knock on. What would he find waiting for him on the other side? Would unveiling the truth shatter the delicate sense of hope he had just begun to build? Jake inhaled deeply, each breath charged with the weight of impending confrontation. The signature brass door of the nursing home loomed ahead, a mere threshold that symbolized myriad accomplishments, failures, and feelings he had long tucked away. As he stepped closer, he could feel his heart pounding in rhythm with the steps that brought him here, each echo amplifying the significance of what lay ahead. He recalled the conversations with Maria, her unwavering faith in his ability to bring about change. It sparked something in him, an awareness of his ability to advocate, to demand respect for his mother and for himself. The mist of doubt that had once clouded his judgment began to lift as he adjusted his posture, squaring his shoulders and recalling the rehearsed points he had meticulously crafted. In that momentary pause, he contemplated his motivation. No longer would he allow past insecurities to dictate the present. Each misstep he had taken in his life now felt like a piece of armor, forged through struggle and resilience. Whether or not the management responded kindly, he recognized he was leveling the playing field. He was no longer an uninitiated observer. He was a son, determined to fight for his mother's dignity and care. Jake pushed through the door, the air tightening around him, as the chill of reality seeped into his bones. The reception area, stark and unwelcoming, seemed to reflect the attitudes he had encountered thus far. After a brief exchange with the receptionist, he was directed to a conference room, a sterile space resembling a courtroom where comfortable conversations often turned into sterile debates. The management team arrived shortly after, their polished appearances disguising the apathy he feared. Jake's stomach tightened as they took their seats, faces devoid of warmth. The head administrator, a woman with hawkish features, greeted him with a professional smile that failed to reach her eyes. The veneer of politeness felt suffocatingly thin. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Sullivan. How can we help you today?" she began, and he sensed the undercurrent of dismissiveness that already hinted at the forthcoming resistance. The tension hung like heavy fog as Jake cleared his throat. The words he had diligently rehearsed felt momentarily scattered, but he quickly regained his composure. "I'm here to discuss my mother's care," he started, channeling the passion and commitment he had nurtured over the past days. With each point he made, citing specific incidents of neglect and areas where policies were not being met, he watched the shifts in their expressions. Their eyes darted momentarily, disguising their growing discomfort with corporate charm. But he was no longer intimidated. He crafted his narrative carefully, weaving in both personal stories about Helen and established policies he had gathered thanks to Ellen's research. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. They could argue facts, but they could never diminish his authenticity. With every assertion, every detailed account, he claimed more of the space in the room, establishing himself not as an adversary, but as an ally, demanding accountability. Yet, just as her demeanor shifted and the head administrator responded with a curt but safe acknowledgement, his resolve faced a test. An unexpected interruption came from a young staff member who quietly opened the door behind him, a hesitant look clouding her eyes as she whispered something to the administrator, something Jake couldn't make out. A chill ran down his spine. What was happening? Did they have someone on the inside willing to speak up, or was this a further attempt to undermine him? Instinctively, he shifted his attention back to the team, gauging the tides of their reactions. "Is there a problem?" Jake questioned, his own voice unwavering despite the apprehension that burrowed in his stomach. "Actually, it seems someone from our staff has decided to report an issue regarding your mother's treatment," the administrator replied, her tone clipped as she exchanged glances with the uneasy staff member. The walls felt as if they were closing in, and Jake's heart raced. Would this be an opportunity or worse, a trap laid out to deflate him? He was no longer certain whether the universe was conspiring for him or against him. In that charged moment, Jake realized he was standing at the pivotal crossroads of discovery. What further truths awaited him in this room? Would the revelations push him deeper into conflict, or offer an invaluable chance for understanding? With the weight of his mother's future still at stake, Jake readied himself for whatever emerged next. The room stood still, an electric tension weaving through the air as Jake's heart hammered in his chest. He fixed his gaze on the administrator, searching for traces of sincerity amidst the cold professionalism. The news was jarring, and uncertainty gnawed at him. Could this be exactly what he needed, or a calculated distraction planned to thwart his convictions? "Who reported it?" Jake asked, his voice steady but his insides twisting. The moment felt like a tightrope walk, every word balanced precariously between resolution and doubt. The administrator hesitated, exchanging glances with the staff member before answering. "That information is confidential, Mr. Sullivan. We take such reports seriously." Jake felt a mix of irritation and urgency swell. Serious enough to act on it, or serious enough to suppress it? The tension in his voice rose, fueled by a protective instinct that surged for his mother. "Let's not get combative here," she replied, though her bravado crumbled slightly under Jake's intense scrutiny. Jake leaned forward, urgency beating in his veins. "I'm not here to fight you, I'm here for my mother. We both know she deserves better than the bare minimum. If someone within these walls has chosen to speak up, we should be building on that, not dismissing it." His words hung thick in the air. The management team seemed to huddle closer together, their body language suddenly defensive. This was his moment to seize the initiative. His mother was worth any risk, and he'd fought too hard to retreat now. As the administrator's lips pressed into a thin line, a glint of unease flickered across her gaze. "I assure you, we are committed to ensuring quality care. Complaints, even anonymous ones, are taken seriously," she replied, but Jake could sense the shaky ground beneath her conviction. He shifted gears, crafting his narrative more strategically. "If there's a legitimate concern, isn't it better to address it openly? I've collected documentation outlining issues. Give me a chance to demonstrate what my mother has experienced." Jake pulled out a folder bursting with notes and clippings. He placed it on the sterile conference table between them, the thick sound of it echoing as it landed. "Let's not hide behind the veil of bureaucracy. My mother deserves that respect." The room fell silent. He could see the management team processing his challenge. It was a tangled mesh of hesitation and discomfort, and he felt the incremental shifts in their expressions. For the first time, they were unsure. His passion, once portrayed as a weakness, was beginning to carve its space into their mindset. The young staff member who had silently intruded earlier now shifted nervously, drawing Jake's attention. He could sense her conflict. Either she would stand up or she would blend back into the shadows. "You can't be afraid to speak out," he said gently, locking eyes with her. "You may have already made a difference just by coming forward. This isn't just about policies, it's a person's life we're discussing." The air crackled, the potential for change looming brightly. The tension could either crack open the walls of indifference or entrench deeper defenses. The administrator cleared her throat, reasserting her authority. "Let's review your documentation, Mr. Sullivan, but understand that we are committed to following proper protocols." Jake nodded, despite the underlying skepticism. Yes, protocols were what had led to neglect, but there was a flicker of hope now. It was a moment of collective choice laid before them, the manager, the staff, and him. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice low but resolute. "Perhaps today can be the start of something better." As they delved into the papers he had gathered, Jake's thoughts raced. What if the staff member's report was the tipping point? Would it force a reckoning within the management? The unfolding answers to these questions insisted he remain vigilant, free from the complacency that had once held him within its grip. But as the discussion progressed, a shadow flickered across the administrator's face, a silent communication he could not decipher. Whatever truths surfaced now felt fraught with new uncertainty. Jake's mind spun ahead, recognizing that this was merely the beginning of unveiling the layers entrenched in this institution. What further complexities awaited him in their discourse? And could the small pulse of change he felt ignite a larger revolution for those like his mother? As the meeting continued, he sharpened his focus. The chance was here, but the stakes were higher than he had anticipated. With the future uncertain, each revelation could either shatter illusions or entrap him in a deeper web of opposition. Would he be ready to confront whatever unfolded next? Jake's heart raced as the pages of his collected documentation fluttered under the combined breath of the management team, their eyes scanning his notes, yet betraying a palpable incomprehension. Each glimmer of hesitation in their expressions felt like a misstep into a minefield, every word an attempt to navigate through the murky waters of their own complacencies. He leaned back slightly, absorbing the moment. The administrator finally gathered her composure enough to speak. "We appreciate your thoroughness, but the protocols surrounding care concerns can be complicated," she said. The way her voice trembled just so revealed her tightly woven apprehensions. The words felt rehearsed, yet lacked sincerity. Jake felt a surge of resolve flooding his core. "You mean complicated for you? For me, it's not complicated at all. My mother's care comes first." As the words escaped his lips, he heard a faint murmur from the young staff member, the one whose conflict he had sensed earlier. "He's right," she managed, her voice trembling yet fiery. It was a small crack in the wall of corporate assurance, but a crack nonetheless. "Could it not simply be that routines have overshadowed compassion?" Jake continued, his tone more fervent. "You have reports of problems and a team that could be that bridge, yet you're ready to put up walls just to protect your image." The administrator's expression barely faltered, though a tightening of her jaw indicated her irritation. "Our focus is on resolution as guided by established protocols. Resolution requires honesty, Jake interjected, his patience fracturing. What kind of resolution comes from silence? Each phrase was a pin poised to pop the balloon of their denial. Several silent moments passed, each second stretched thinner with tension, tilting decisions towards unexpected conflict. As Jake looked around the room, he sensed the many unspoken questions trapped within them. They were trapped in a cage of error and apathy, built brick by brick over years, and he was the unexpected hammer. "Let's test this conviction then," Jake said, shifting the confrontation into a challenge. "I propose a drive down the wards. Let me show you firsthand what my mother and others face each day. Bring your protocols with you and let's see how they stand against real experience." "No, that's not how we operate," the administrator replied, but her voice wavered, as if she felt the shaky ground beneath her authority. "Then how do you operate?" Jake pushed, now feeling the energy build. "By avoiding what must be acknowledged, by letting people languish because of qualifications on paper that only serve you." His words struck home, the atmosphere electrified with possibility. An uneasy murmur rippled through the staff. The young woman abruptly nodded, meeting Jake's fervent gaze, something behind her eyes now transformed from fear to an inkling of determination. "Maybe it's time to rethink how we define care," she offered hesitantly, but with a strength that dimmed the administrator's authority. The administrator glanced desperately around the room now, searching for sure footing while the staff visibly swayed toward Jake's revelations. They could feel the grip of management slipping. "Our evaluations are based on holistic methodologies," she began feebly, but her words were drowned by a wave of energy that rose from Jake's commitment. "Cut the jargon," Jake exclaimed, his fervor igniting the room. "People like my mother should not be part of a protocol. They are human beings with lives, rights, and unmet needs. You can decide right now if you are here to defend policies or to advocate for people." For a moment silence ruled supreme, the kind that lingered when the air carries a revelation eager to shatter the mundane. Jake could feel the tide beginning to turn. The young staff member's gaze held conviction now. Others were nodding, their barriers cracking under the relentless pressure of empathy. Was this the turning point? As he awaited their response, adrenaline surged, almost blinding him to the risk he was taking. Would they back him, or would the machine stand firm? Finally, the administrator sighed deeply, her shoulders dropping as if weighed down by the collective tension. We can consider a visit, but you should know we will still adhere to our mandated protocols." A small victory, but he sensed a flicker of doubt in her. "I'll take it," Jake replied coolly, the weight of his nerves melting into determination. "But know this, I'll be watching to see if today's discussions lead to action, or simply another delay." As they began to gather his notes, fueled by new energy, Jake finally felt a sliver of what could be, a realization tightening within him. He was shaping not just a path for his mother, but igniting a quiet revolution hinged on accountability, choice, and compassion. The air shifted again, each person now undeniably anchored by the revelation they shared. But beyond that moment lingered a shadow. What about the hidden forces at play within this institution, those ready to resist any real change? As Jake contemplated the hidden complexities yet to surface, a tingling urgency gripped him. This was just the beginning. What dangers lurked beneath the surface, waiting to surface as he forced the change? Could the revelation of his mother's suffering uncover deeper malaise within the very fabric of this institution? The day of the ward's visit loomed over Jake like a storm cloud, heavy with the anticipation of confrontation and revelation. Despite the administrator's tentative agreement, the underlying tension was palpable, and every tissue in his body buzzed with resolve. He needed to be a voice for not just his mother, but every silent struggle that echoed in those sterile corridors. Taking a deep breath, Jake reminded himself of his purpose. As the hours dwindled towards the visit, he meticulously planned his approach. This was no longer just about advocating for his mother's care. It was a test of every belief he had begun to uncover about the institution and, by extension, himself. When the day arrived, the familiar scent of antiseptic filled him with a mix of dread and determination. The cohort of management accompanied him, their professionalism contrasting sharply with the worn faces of the residents they would encounter. Each step felt arduous, and Jake's heart raced with the pressure of expectations. He was not simply looking to expose failings. This was an opportunity for growth, his own and theirs. Arriving at the first ward, Jake focused. He met the eyes of the residents searching for their stories underneath the layers of perceived bureaucracy. A frail woman sat alone, her frail hands clutching a faded photograph. He approached her, asking gently about her life, fostering a connection that wasn't merely transactional. In that moment, her eyes lit up, revealing a spirit that hadn't been hampered by the walls around her. The administrator hovered nearby, visibly uncomfortable, as the encounter shifted into something real. "We need to move on," she urged, interrupting the invocation of humanity Jake had begun to draw forth. "No," he said, a new fierceness igniting within. "This is exactly why we're here. Tell me, how does your predetermined agenda serve her needs?" He gestured toward the woman, who had now begun sharing a story of lost love with a tremor of nostalgia that filled the room. For a moment the air was thick with unfiltered emotion, reminding them all that this place was filled with lives and hearts beyond policies. The team shifted awkwardly, while the young staff member from the meeting earlier stood tall beside Jake, her expression shifting to one of solidarity. "What if we took a step back?" she suggested softly, her voice resonating with newfound strength amidst the discord. "What if we approached care not as a checklist, but a genuine interaction?" The administrative team exchanged uncertain looks, their earlier authority wavering under the weight of authenticity flooding the room. Jake seized the moment, keenly aware of his own evolution. He was moving from merely advocating for his mother to sparking a broader conversation about dignity, respect, and the fundamental essence of care. As they traversed the wards, Jake could see the walls of indifference crumbling slowly, his confidence growing each time the staff engaged, not with rote responses, but with genuine interest. They listened to stories, they faced uncomfortable truths. Each interaction not only reinforced his purpose, but also unearthed a buried empathy within him, the realization that change starts with one voice, but can multiply through shared vulnerability. This journey was shifting Jake in ways he hadn't anticipated. He was discovering a leadership within himself, a capacity to challenge, to inspire, and more importantly, to connect. However, as they reached the final ward of the day, Jake noticed an unmistakable tension. Something lurked beneath the surface. A nurse whispered to him about a meeting after the tour, her eyes flickering with urgency. "What was that about?" he asked, but she merely shook her head, retreating into the mix of staff. Unease settled in the pit of his stomach. Who would resist this change? What defenses had been erected behind closed doors? The questions gripped him as he realized that while the visit was enlightening, it was also a harbinger of deeper challenges to come. Those in power resisting the tide might be more dangerous than he anticipated. As the group made their way back to the meeting room, Jake knew he was on the brink of igniting a movement within the organization. If only they could steer away from the paradigms that had long shielded them from reality. The dawning of a new era of care rested on his shoulders as he faced what lay ahead. Aware that old habits die hard, and the true test of his determination awaited just beyond the officials' polished rhetoric. What lay in store for him and his newfound allies in this unfolding battle against complacency? Would they be united in this cause, or would they crumble at the hands of unseen resistance? The tension in the meeting room hung like a thick fog as Jake stood at the front, acutely aware of the eyes locked on him. Each gaze held varying degrees of skepticism, curiosity, and caution. The administrative team, eager to regain control after the unconventional visit, seemed poised for confrontation, their polished facades cracking under the weight of unspoken fears. Jake swallowed hard, trying to ground himself in the fresh resolve that had ignited during the ward visit. There was no turning back now. "Today has shown us something vital," he began, his voice steady, yet charged with urgency. "This isn't just about following procedures. It's about people, their dignity, their lives." There was a moment of silence, the atmosphere thick with uncertainty. And then an unexpected voice broke through. The young staff member from earlier, who had courageously offered her insight during the tour, stood to echo Jake's sentiments. Everyone here knows the system has its flaws. What if we made a conscious effort to change it? What if we began to regard these interactions as opportunities for real care rather than bureaucratic obligations? She punctuated her points with sincerity, and her passion sparked a flicker of agreement in the room. Jake watched as some team members nodded, their initial resistance beginning to soften. But the administrator's face was a picture of defiance, eyes narrowing as she prepared to respond. "We operate under a framework for a reason," she said, her tone cool and clipped. "We are accountable for compliance. Personal stories, while poignant, cannot afford us the luxury of deviance." Jake felt a pang in his chest. The administrator's words were thick with the weight of the institution's culture, a protective barrier built over years of procedural rigidity. He inhaled deeply, knowing it was now or never. But isn't adherence to protocol what got us here? Isn't this certain safety simply a mask over underlying issues of care? We cannot continue to prioritize compliance over compassion. It's time to reevaluate how we define care. The administrator's expression hardened, but Jake sensed that others were beginning to grapple with the challenges of this bureaucratic status quo. He kept pushing, his voice rising with urgency. "We can build a new model of compassion, where each care interaction is grounded in genuine connection and respect. We owe it to those we serve." The administrator interrupted, eyes flashing. "And how do you propose we implement such a monumental shift? With stories alone?" Her skepticism was palpable, but Jake could feel the atmosphere shifting. This was the moment to reveal his own burgeoning ideas. "Yes, stories are a start," he said more defiantly this time. "Let's establish regular training sessions focused on empathy as a core value. We should adopt patient-centered assessments, where every employee learns to operate not only from a checklist, but from an understanding of the people behind them. Perhaps we could even incorporate residents into that training, allowing them to share their experiences directly." There was movement in the room as dissent turned to contemplation. Some staff exchanged glances, their previous defenses melting, while others nodded, visibly intrigued by the idea of a collaborative approach. Jake's heart raced. He could feel potential sparking in the air, yet doubt crept in. What if this wasn't enough? What if resistance loomed larger than realization? Just as he was about to continue, the tension in the room thickened once more. The nurse who had whispered to him earlier suddenly added, "But what about the risks? There are concerns rising from upper management that this approach could lead to liability issues. They won't agree to open us up to vulnerability." Jake's mind raced, an array of strategies unfolding in quick succession. Dealing with objections was pivotal, but they needed to be met with solutions, not fear. "Let's face that head-on," Jake replied quickly. "I'm willing to take it to those in power, to advocate for this change ourselves. We need to champion the value of compassion as our organization's true strength." The murmurs in the room grew, a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. Jake's heart pounded as he acutely recognized that the battle was far from over. He was entering a territory riddled with opposition, the very foundation of tradition and policy threatened by the revelation of their true purpose. With newfound determination, he straightened his posture, ready to take the plunge into the unknown waters of confrontation. "We must unite behind our mission of care. Will you join me in this effort?" As faces turned toward him, some emboldened, others entrenched in apprehension, an unsettling thought lingered at the forefront of his mind. What awaited him when all was said and done? The realization struck with a chilling clarity. The true reckoning lay ahead, not just between Jake and the administration, but within himself. Who would rise to support this change, and who would remain ensnared in old habits? The very essence of transformation teetered on the edge, begging to be ignited or extinguished, and Jake was ready to face whatever consequences came next. Would he triumph, or would he flounder amidst the resistance? The time had come to face not only the institution, but also the deeper, conflicting shadows within. Jake stood before his colleagues, the echo of his challenge hanging in the air like a call to arms. Hearts raced and minds churned, a kaleidoscope of thoughts unfolding within the assembly. He could sense a shift, a wavering in the long-held convictions of the team. This was a pivotal moment, and despite the anxiety prickling at his skin, Jake felt an unexpected surge of clarity coursing through him. He couldn't allow the administrator's hard line to deter him. He had stepped into this role with a belief that care was a two-way street, one illuminated by empathy and understanding. Perhaps he had been timid, caught in the oppressive fog of conformity, but it was time to step out into the open, to forge a path bravely. "Let's prepare a proposal," Jake declared, his voice firm. "We need to address these vulnerability concerns directly. I want to gather evidence, testimonials from our patients and staff about the current system. We can identify what's working and what's not. This can't just be about policy changes, but a cultural shift within our entire operation." As he spoke, Jake felt eyes shifting toward him, some more open to his vision, while others were still clouded by skepticism. This was the tender moment where the real conflict lay. He had ignited something, but would it catch fire or fizzle out? A wave of unease rolled over him. Was he being rash in his optimism? There was no mistaking that the administration had been entrenched in their ways for years, fortifying their walls against change. What if they pushed back harder once he escalated the proposal? The very thought of facing higher-ups filled him with a cocktail of dread and exhilaration. His mind volleyed between excitement and doubt, haunted by the weight of the potential fallout. But he realized that this hesitation stemmed from a different fear, the fear not of failing, but of succeeding and having to follow through with actual changes that lived up to his aspirations. He needed to cultivate inner resolve, learning to embrace uncertainty as a roommate rather than an adversary. With each murmur of agreement that rippled through the room, as more individuals began to nod thoughtfully, Jake could feel the contours of his vision sharpening. Trying to harness the collective concern of the room, he encouraged them, "Let's create a discussion round where any potential issues can be raised. I want you to bring your questions, your worries. The more we talk, the more we can address these barriers before they become insurmountable." The administrator remained stony-faced, arms crossed tightly over her chest, signaling her resistance. Yet amid her defiance, Jake noticed beads of sweat forming at her brow. Something within her stance faltered, however slight, and Jake seized that moment to push further. Change is what we need, an evolution in our mindset. Together, we can reimagine our responsibilities as caregivers, where we can listen and serve as advocates. We can cultivate a system that honors not just the rules but the people behind those rules. As the meeting drew to a close, Jake's legs felt heavier. There was still a long road ahead, and the gnawing voice of self-doubt whispered incessantly. Could he really rally this team into action? Could he face the hierarchies that would surely rise against him? The tension was palpable, and as Jake left the meeting room, a single thought anchored itself firmly in his mind. He needed to brace himself for the inevitable backlash that his ambitions would attract. This was an uphill battle, and it would test not only him but the very foundations of his professional identity. Outside the confines of the meeting, Jake felt a wave of both readiness and dread settle in. The day was only half over, yet he understood that the real challenge was just beginning. A flicker of determination ignited within him. He recalled the young staff member who had stood up. Her hope reignited his own. There must be others like her, advocates waiting to be heard. But the lingering question remained. Would they find their strength in numbers, or would his efforts dissolve under scrutiny? With the spectre of conflict looming, Jake steeled himself for the immediate future, ready to navigate the storm that was sure to follow. The tide had shifted, but would it carry him forward or sweep him away entirely? Jake pivoted into a moment of resurgence that felt monumental. But as he settled into the aftermath of the meeting, a gripping anxiety loomed over his next steps. The administrator had been resolute while the atmosphere had crackled with doubt. Yet amidst all his uncertainties, Jake found clarity. This was a day of transformation, both for him and, potentially, for the long-ignored residents of the nursing home. Days passed, and Jake leaned into action. He organized meetings with the staff, creating a safe environment where discomfort could transform into dialogue. Their initiative to gather stories and concerns breathed life back into stagnant processes. The gravity of each narrative shared sparked greater commitment from his colleagues, who resonated with the reality of the challenges residents faced. His personal growth burgeoned in tandem. He found himself stepping away from the shadows of self-doubt. No longer confined to a fortress of ambition, he embraced the role of an advocate, becoming a compelling voice for those who had been left unheard. Each session infused him with newfound resilience, fostering camaraderie and empowerment within the staff, while invigorating the mission to catalyze change. One afternoon, as he sat in the nursing home cafe with a group of caregivers, Jake noticed the profound transformation around him. Conversations morphed from mundane exchanges about shifts and schedules to passionate discussions about the needs of their residents. He felt a sense of belonging he had never known in the corporate world. This was community forged through purpose, each member empowered to contribute. As the weeks unfolded, he and the staff solidified a proposal detailing the shifts in care strategies based on empathetic practices. The administrator, initially steadfast in her resistance, had begun softening, compelled to acknowledge the rumbles of dissent among her team. The prospect of a revamped care approach, one human-centered rather than protocol-heavy, began to flicker on the horizon. Then an unexpected opportunity arose when the nursing home was slated for inspection from higher management, a chance to showcase their progress. With the adrenaline of possibility surging through him, Jake rallied the staff, emphasizing the significance of this moment. They knew they had to present their findings and their shared commitment to change with confidence and conviction. The day of inspection was rife with anticipation. Jake walked through the now vibrant hallways, filled with collaboration and laughter echoing off the walls. Each resident had been invited into the discussion, their voices now integral threads in the fabric of improved care. He could feel the unmistakable shift. The sterile environment of neglect was being replaced with warmth and genuine concern. When the inspection team arrived, Jake felt a surge of pride in his heart. They presented the transformative changes made in collaboration with residents, supported by documentation of improvement, testimonials, and responsive care strategies. As he articulated their collective commitment, the atmosphere buzzed with authenticity. The administrator, initially apprehensive, now nodded approvingly, her defenses lowering as she saw the crafted vision unfold. After the inspection, the atmosphere swirled with exhilaration. Results trickled in, mixed with relief and affirmation. The nursing home had passed all the crucial metrics. It was a monumental achievement, validation for the hard work and emotional investment made by everyone involved. In that moment, Jake understood the weight of his transformation. He had not only advocated for his mother's dignity, but had woven himself into the fabric of a community that aspired for something greater. The voices that once haunted him with guilt now gave way to pride. He had uncovered the true facet of success, rooted not in accolades but in purpose and connection. As he walked alongside Maria later that day, he felt a sense of solidarity, knowing their collaboration had sparked something profound. She smiled, a gleam of recognition shared between them. "You did it, Jake. The change is here," she said, her voice steady. "Yes, but it's only the beginning." He embraced the horizon of continued innovation and responsibility. As they strolled toward the nursing home, Jake felt liberated. He could now face challenges, not as an architect of structures, but as an architect of care, building something lasting and authentic. As he bid farewell to the day, a new purpose illuminated his path. The nagging doubts fell away, replaced with robust confidence. He had confronted his vulnerabilities and emerged as a driving force for positive change. The journey taught him that true fulfillment belongs to those fearless enough to engage with their humanity and dedicate themselves to the well-being of others. Now, as he stepped into a future undeterred by obstacles, he was ready to embrace continual growth and influence, knowing he was equipped with both the competence and conviction to forge a path ahead. The conclusion was not merely an end. It represented the birth of a lifelong commitment to advocacy and genuine, compassionate care. With that, it's urgent and impactful to tell you, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This helps everyone discover these transformative journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear what you think. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to share this right now. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.